So the process, the first part of the process was just agreeing on design goals, and some of those were inspired by the notes in there, just reading through the notes again to refresh myself with the issues that people had had. And some of it was just, okay, our experience of it is that we want to change things, like for instance, reconnaissance just doesn't seem to be doing enough to be worthwhile. Transports, version 2, completely useless, things like that. We want to bring these into the game. And some of it was just a long list of, okay, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem. And of course, at that stage, we had suggested solutions to most of them as well. Here's a problem, here's what we think. Some of them were, here's a problem, no idea what we're going to do about it, but we'll have to solve it.
You know, when you're designing a book, there's a lot of things that come up, especially when we were working on version 3. There's a lot of things that came up that were, oh, wow, that we didn't really see that coming, or people will play it something completely differently or see something in a completely different way. That's a part of what makes an evolving game so active, I suppose, and I think it's just a process that I think people have to be ready to deal with.
And some ideas go through 2, 3, and in the case of the rulebook, version 3 rulebook, some ideas went through 4 or 5 complete revisions as we tried an idea, refined it, and got to the point where this just isn't going to work. Throw that out. Let's come up with the next best idea and work through that, and nope, that's not going to work. Some ideas lasted one whole playtest session. You know, you spend 3 or 4 days writing it all up and so forth and getting the idea right, and then 2 hours of playtesting, it's like, this is never going to work. It sounded good in theory. Others lasted months and months and months.
One that I thought might give people the most trouble was the changes to the assault rules, but that actually hasn't seemed to have, most people seem to have read it, adopted it, taken it on, play it that way. I mean every now and again you go to a tournament and someone plays something the old way, without, because they're just not thinking, they're just going, this is how our plays all works. But actually it's actually changed in version 3. Yeah.
Assaults was definitely where we started, because as you all know, version 2 to version 3, it's a significant rewrite of assaults. And yeah, that was still right through the whole process. What was it? Best part of a year of playtesting. It was still one of the last things being playtested, as well as one of the first things. Just trying to get rid of the rough edges and make it work.
Yeah, Hen and Chicks was a big change in version 3, and going in, we knew that had to change, and I think it stemmed from a good 5 years of seeing how Soviets were performing and acting on the table.
It wasn't being used how it was intended to be. It wasn't giving the Soviets the right feel, and it was more it was making the players play quiet. There was a lot of sort of micromanagement of the unit to move forward and shoot. So they were like moving some and then kind of hopping over each other, leapfrogging over each other, sort of thing, to keep the shooting up while still moving forward.
And I think at the end of the day, we kind of just decided that, yeah, you know what, that doesn't look like a Soviet tactic, you know, shuffling ever so, you know, you stay under 6 inches and they're just kind of, and you've got such a large unit that you can leave some behind, and they seemed quite sneaky and too subtle for what we thought Soviets need to be blunt.
The original Hen and Chicks had a number of failures that just didn't reproduce that sort of thing. People still tended to wiggle and wobble them. So when version 2 came along, we had another go. And we spent quite a bit of time on that. And ended up still, after that came out, people wiggling and wobbling little parts of their formation and so forth. And it's like, no, what we really need is an either-or type thing going. Either you're doing this or you're doing this. And so the changes to Hen and Chicks were actually sort of worked out, by and large, within a year or so, year to 2 years after version 2 came out. We knew where Hen and Chicks needed to go, and we'd actually played around with it and so forth. So when version 3 came out, changes to Hen and Chicks were, again, one of the first things we put out to playtest, because we had a pretty good idea of what we wanted.
With the new Hen and Chicks, we just wanted to make it, A, a simpler rule, so there's less of that fudging about, and B, try and keep it more to the character of the Soviets. So I mean, one of the comments that has been made about Soviets in World War II is that the Germans, that's where the hen and chicks comes from, is it looked like the command tank was, and then all the other tanks were following it around.
So that's where version 3 started from. And at the same time, we went through a graphic design process of how do we want version 3 to look? And one of the key things there is we wanted a lot more diagrams, and the diagrams to be more useful and so forth. So the graphic designers started on that side, while us and the development team started working towards making the rules work.
The design for version 3 came about with basically a lot of long discussions with Pete, Phil and JP about what they wanted to achieve, what version 2 didn't quite achieve for them. Pete was actually he wanted a similar idea of, three-dimensional photographs in version 2 as well, but at that time we didn't really have the expertise to do it, or the time. Version 2 had a lot of time constraints on it, and so when we sat down for version 3, he really wanted to focus on getting sort of the photographic sort of more table-driven examples in there, and basically said, no, that's going to take as long as it needs to take to get how we want. And it probably took about a week of just trial and error between different styles, just trying to get those particular photos looking right.
Right, and that style is propagated into new books. Like, for example, you have a lot of the cartoon, like you have the soldier kind of telling you things, and so that's something you guys have kind of...
Yeah, we really wanted to, like with a soldier, we really wanted to make that connection between, the reader and the diagram. We wanted it more of a dialogue as opposed to just reading a rule. So we thought, having that, soldier, that sort of commando comic look of actually getting involved in the story, just to make things easier, making it a bit more fun to read. And there's no point in going back to, the top-down cut-out images anymore now that we can do it in a sort of a fresher, photographic style. There's no point in going back.
And one of the unfortunate things about version 3 was that, well, not unfortunate, but just a consequence, was that the Earth and Steel and Turning Tide, their points for certain things became a little bit out of date because of that. One of the decisions made for version 3 was to reduce the cost of Panzer IVs, because previously Panzer IVs and Stugs were about the same cost, but we've actually fiddled with how the weighting of the different parts of the points go, and now the Panzer IVs are worth a little bit less than the Stugs, so all your Panzer IV prices should come down. And same with Shermans, like 75mm Shermans, a similar thing there. All 75mm Shermans have come down. I mean, one of the things that people have seen is that some things don't seem to stay the same. But what's actually happened is that some vehicles in the platoon have gone up and others have gone down, but it's actually stayed about roughly the same points.